Warrior in Magic. Big money, big prizes. I love it.
And welcome to another episode of Retrovaniacs. As always, I'm Jeremy Parmentier here with Jeremy Gregory.
Hey, guys.
And this week, unfortunately, Billie Holiday will not be able to make it. We did delay this episode a week, which is why we put up the YouTube subscriber video. He's not going to make it this week, but we didn't want to hold off any longer. He will be back. But for this week, we have a special guest, Dave Boyce, contributor to Broken Glasses Gaming YouTube channel.
Hi, hello.
Dave, if you don't watch Broken Glasses Gaming, first off, stop the podcast immediately and go check it out. Dave's on a lot of the episodes where they focus on, games that we would have talked about. A lot of Nintendo, Genesis, Super Nintendo games that the other hosts on the network haven't really played before. So he kind of forces them to play through games like Moonwalker and never get past one room. It's an excellent series of YouTube videos I highly recommend checking out. So, Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Just finished up actually playing several Double Dragon games today, so excited to talk about these.
Yes, I'm very glad you did. Otherwise, this would be a very awkward guest host podcast where I didn't tell you what game we were talking about and you came prepared to talk about Crystallis. It would have been an awkward show, although I do want to do that game at some point. So since our last episode, I have done nothing but play Final Fantasy VIII, a game that I hate, and I've tried to play this game at least 5 or 6 times previously where I actually put real time into it. I've now bought, this is the 4th time I've purchased Final Fantasy VIII. I bought it when it was new. I bought it when it was re-released on PC, and I bought it twice on PSP and then again now on the Vita for no good reason. So I'm playing through it again. I'm at the very end of Disc 1, and I still can't understand why I'm doing this. I still hate it.
Why do you keep doing this to yourself? I mean, you don't like this game. Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, it's got its people that like it, but it is not a great Final Fantasy. I would put it like one of the absolute bottom tier Final Fantasies. It's terrible. Why do you keep doing this?
It's in my bottom tier role-playing games, but I'm determined to figure out why it's good because there are so many people that love it. And the other Final Fantasies that people hate, I absolutely love. People hate 12. I think 12 is one of the best games in the series. And people, don't like 9. I think 9 is great. Even 10. I hated 10. Now 10 has become one of my favorite games. I'm playing through it yet again in my spare time to try to beat all the Dark Aeons, which I'm never going to do, but at least I can pretend. But I haven't found anything in 8 that I like except for the card game, and that's really not a reason to play that game. So I'm playing through it again.
That card game gets super terrible whenever random starts showing up too.
Yeah, no,
and all the other rules.
Well, yeah, once they change the rules around, you're like, oh, I hate this game. But I'm still going to play it, and I want to find all the cards. And since one of your abilities lets you turn enemies into cards, I'm like, woo, a whole nother game I can play. I could turn enemies into cards.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, there's really no redeeming features, but I'm still going to play it, and I am updating it on my unread Twitter feed. So, Jeremy, since our last episode, what have you been playing?
So I think you know that I really love some Dark Souls. It's one of my favorite series of all time. Bloodborne, this generation is probably my favorite game of this entire generation. So when Neo was announced, I was pretty excited about it because it was kind of like Team Ninja kind of getting back to their roots and doing a game in the vein of Dark Souls, which kind of sounds insane. I don't know if either of you played the old original Xbox or Xbox 360 Ninja Gaiden games, but imagine Neo as that, but with Dark Souls as its kind of blueprint for gameplay, and it's insane. I love this game. It's one of the best games I've played this generation outside of Bloodborne. If you like any sort of Dark Souls games, or if you just like Ninja Gaiden from back in the day on the 360 and Xbox, it's an amazing combination, and it really seems like a return to form for what Team Ninja went off doing. I wasn't a big fan of Ninja Gaiden 2, but those original Ninja Gaiden games, they were so good. And this is just exactly what I wanted from them.
When you say it plays like Ninja Gaiden and Dark Souls, though, is it fast like Ninja Gaiden but punishing like Dark Souls, or is it kind of like those are like two different play styles? I'm just trying to parse.
No, I get you. It's so Dark Souls is kind of more physics based. I would say with its combat, and Ninja Gaiden is more, I would maybe precise, almost like a fighting game.
Right.
And you still get that sort of physics based gameplay with Neo, but it's much more of what Ninja Gaiden combat felt like. Very fast, very precise, very like, if I miss this, you instantly know that you've missed it. You're hit on somebody. You absolutely know why you've done it, just because you were just off by just half a second. And it's so much faster than the Dark. Even Bloodborne's a pretty fast Souls style game. But compared to Neo, it is just like you're running along in slow motion. Neo is a much faster paced Dark Souls. It's much more accurate as far as the combat goes. And it does just so many neat little things as far as just like the weapons and how you can master them. For every weapon that you get, you've got a high, medium, low stance that all have different types of attacks that you have to master for each one. And you actually find yourself having to switch between high, medium, and low attacks for a lot of the enemies. So it's really not so much as I hate to call like Souls games like basic combat, but sometimes it kind of comes down to that compared to like something like Ninja Gaiden. And Neo is very, very you just really have to master it to figure it out. And I absolutely love that. That's what I love about Neo. So it's hard to fucking say what, how they compare, because I know there's a lot of people that just don't like Neo that like the Souls games, but I absolutely love Neo. It's just great.
I want to try it. I've heard mixed things. I mean, you've talked about it several times to me offline, and I've heard other people say they love it too. But then if you're big into the Souls community, and I don't think I am, hopefully I can never say I'm into any community, but the Souls community is not as sold on it. A lot of things they don't like about it is basically just that it's not Dark Souls. But that's a hard comparison to make. So I'll definitely have to try it and get back to you on it. I definitely just started playing Bloodborne, and it is much faster than the regular Souls game. So faster than that seems to be, I don't know if I even can handle that, but that's okay. I definitely want to check it out. So Dave, other than playing Double Dragon, which is what we're going to talk about in several seconds, what else have you been playing recently, a game or two that you're really enjoying?
Real quick, I bought what was the newest one? Batman Arkham Knight. I bought that for $20. It was the Game of the Year edition, so it had all the DLC and all the patches and stuff like that I didn't have to worry about at launch when I read about that botched nonsense. But it's actually a pretty good experience if you like the other Arkham games. When you were hearing like the bad news when this first came out and it was plagued by bugs and whatnot. Other than that, I've been just playing Overwatch on the PC nonstop with your brother, no less. So.
Oh, my brother. Yeah, I'm sure he plays it a lot. He has a lot of free time at night, and I don't. So I also suck at those games. I've never been good at any kind of squad mission shooters kind of stuff. I suck at all those games.
See, the thing with that game though is like anyone can play it. There's a role for anyone to play essentially and be good. I mean, there's one character that just runs around and heals just by area of effect. All you got to do is run around, essentially.
Well, that could be me. Actually, normally I'm the guy with the shotgun that just charges people and dies 100 times, but I'll take that one guy out once and feel really good about it. That's my normal point. Well, there are no shotguns in this week's game, at least not the one we're really going to heavily focus on. I didn't play enough of 3 to say if that's true or not. The Double Dragon series on Nintendo, and then the new D-Make on the PS4 and PC, Double Dragon 4. When Billy said he wasn't going to make this episode, I thought, okay, well, Jeremy and I can talk for 10 minutes about Double Dragon, and then we can talk a lot about how much we really like Neo and Bloodborne. But thankfully, I saw that on one of the more recent YouTubes that Broken Glasses Gaming had put up, Dave here had played through the first whole Double Dragon game on Nintendo, start to finish, and therefore I thought, great, I can reach out and see what he thinks of Double Dragon 4, knowing that he knows more than I've ever known about Double Dragon 1, as I've never finished it.
Double Dragon 4 was really interesting when I first heard about it, and I saw the screenshots, and I thought it was going to be something like Mega Man-like. So I went back and actually started playing through the old Double Dragon games first, just to see how it holds up, kind of like what you guys did with your podcast right now. And Double Dragon 1 is an interesting game because the NES version is completely different from the arcade version. The arcade version is just a straight up arcade brawler, quarter muncher, just like the Turtles and other games like that out there. But Double Dragon 1 was interesting in the fact that it was a beat 'em up, but it also had like a weird RPG leveling up system. And I don't know if you guys actually enjoyed that aspect of it or not.
I mean, for me, like, most of my friends, they really enjoyed Double Dragon on the NES, and that's kind of where they got their first introduction to Double Dragon. For me, I was very much into the Double Dragon arcade game first because a barber shop that my parents went to when I was a kid, they had one single arcade game, and it was Double Dragon. And every single time, that's really about the only way they can get me to cut my hair, is to give me a few quarters and promise me that I could play this stupid video game at the barber. And that was my first experience with Double Dragon, and absolutely, it's one of my favorite arcade games of all time. It's just so much fun to sit there and play over and over again, even though I'm terrible at it. So yeah, when I saw the Double Dragon on the NES came out, that was where it's. We'll talk about it, but it's definitely a lot different. But really, for me, the arcade game was what really got me into Double Dragon.
Well, I was definitely a person who played Double Dragon first on the Nintendo. There were no arcades anywhere near me. It would have to be a special trip to like a mall or the beach to see an arcade game. So generally, I found everything when it was on the NES. I knew it was an arcade game before it was an NES game, but one I hadn't really played. So as David talked about before, it does have a leveling up system, unlike pretty much every other entry in the series that we're going to discuss at least. But before we get into the level up system, the basic game of Double Dragon, if for somehow you've never seen it, first off, there will be YouTube clips of Double Dragon 4 that we're going to link on Twitter and on our Facebook page. But it's a brawler. It's a classic brawler. You start on the left side of the screen, you walk around a cityscape of some sort, and just literally punch, kick, and jump kick people to death over and over and over again. Just like Final Fight or Streets of Rage or any of those other games, but a little more basic than those games because it's older than those games. But that said, the original Double Dragon was a game I must have spent hours and hours and hours on, just going through, never beating somehow, but getting to the 4th level. It's only 4 levels long, but all the levels are fairly involved, and unlike the other games where you just punch, kick, you get all the moves from the start, in Double Dragon on Nintendo, you only have a handful of moves that even the book doesn't really explain this too well, the manual for the game. You get a punch and a kick and a jump, which is by pushing both punch and kick at the same time. But later on, as you level up, which you level up just by fighting guys, you'll see like an extra score build up to 999, and then once it hits that, it flips over, you get new level, and some new moves unlock. It doesn't really explain any of this except for by trial and error, but that's how you earn the other moves that do a lot more damage, that make you a lot more able to deal with groups of people at a time. A jump kick is added later on. The ability to uppercut after a jump kick is added later on. Dave played this a lot more than me recently, so he probably knows the other more intricate moves you get later, but you only start with a very small move set in Double Dragon.
Yeah, you start off with the punches and the kicks, like you said at first, and a jump that's pretty much useless that you don't want to use at all. Then level 2 comes with the uppercuts in the roundhouse, which is just a little flourish. It's like, I don't think there's any difference in the damage there. Then the jump kick comes, and then you get to start punching people in the face and then throwing them over your shoulder. Then you can sit on them, I believe, and then punch them in the face. Then comes the elbow smash, and then the spin kick that basically one-shots everyone. But the interesting thing about that, too, like you said, I played also a lot as a kid, so you also start picking up on weird glitches and stuff like that throughout the entire game, and this game is actually pretty buggy if you screw around with the background and whatnot. In that video you mentioned, there's a way to actually level your character up to max level right away by hitting an invisible character, so the game is pretty broken. You can also beat bosses by just running away from them.
Yeah, I saw that. You could run away from, I think it's the first level boss, by just going down a ladder. That's pretty great.
Yeah. It's just like no one play tested this thing apparently.
Well, one of the
ones one of the big disappointments, I guess for me, like coming from the arcade version to the NES version, I knew what the arcade version was, and that NES version was, I do have a lot of nostalgia for it, but it's not really that Double Dragon arcade game. It's kind of its own thing. It just doesn't quite play like the arcade game, and for better or worse, there are those like the leveling up and things like that. And even as a kid, I didn't understand any of that. Like, I had no clue that there was any sort of leveling system. I read the instructions, but did it ever really actually explain that was the thing? It just had a move list in the instruction booklet.
Yeah, I personally don't remember learning about it. Like I figured it out when I was older, to be honest.
Well, it definitely doesn't.
I couldn't get very far in it, mainly because it's one of those games where, unlike all the other Double Dragons, if you die, you will actually just restart the stage. You will not just respawn immediately.
Right.
So that made that game, even though it's very short, for a kid that didn't understand the whole leveling system and things like that, it was almost impossible.
It was hard for many reasons, and you're right. In the manual, it does not explain specifically the level up system. It does mention that there is, that little number does level you up, but when you go to the move list section, it doesn't say under most of the moves what that means. There are a couple that say that you don't get it until later on in the game or something, but generally, no. Like the jump kick's the big one. After playing, I didn't go back and play these until after I had played Double Dragon 4 a little bit. And I was like, why am I not jump kicking? What am I doing wrong? And I sat there and I was like, there is a jump kick. The manual mentions there's a jump kick. What am I doing wrong? And then I realized, oh, I see. I have to level up and beat a couple guys, which it's not a major deal. And I think, again, when you go back to that time frame playing the Nintendo game, if you didn't have these other games, you wouldn't even worry about it. It's a cool new feature, I guess. But it definitely was not one of the moves you start with is that jump kick. The other thing that makes the first one very hard is that, yes, when you die, you have to restart the area, but the platforming in it is pain. And the platforming in all these, to spoil the rest of this, is pretty terrible. But in the first one especially, it was hard enough anyway just to get it without any jumps or any weird background to get from the start of the level to the end of the level. You add in some of the stuff they threw in there, and it just... I'm impressed that you were able to finish the game now without just like, you know what, I'm going to just put in some kind of invincibility cheat and be done.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous that once they had, like, the jump is, once you jump, you're committed to that jump. There's no move air. You can't move around the air, and you go where you go. Like, the one stage towards the end, there's a bunch of elevators going up and down, and yeah, if you miss that jump, you'll watch your character slowly move like 8 screens down to his death, and he just has the ho-hum face on it, just like, well, here I go, I'm going to die.
Well, and there's no continue. You have, 3 lives, and that's
3 lives.
That's it. And if you don't finish it, too bad for you. I mean, thankfully it's short, and this game came out in 1988. 1988, I would have had time all day long, all weekend long, all month long to play this game, because again, you get one new game on Nintendo, it's probably the only one you're going to see for a month or more. So you'd put the time in to make that work out for you. But now I don't have that kind of time. So I did not get as far in the original Double Dragon, but I got far enough to say, okay, here's how this is different from the game we're going to talk about later on, which is Double Dragon 4. So Double Dragon 2 came out a year later, 1989. Now, Double Dragon 1, the other thing I forgot to say is it's only one player, really. It has a 2-player option, but it's alternating players. You play, you die, the next person gets to start their turn until they die, right?
Right. That was incredibly disappointing to me as a kid.
Yeah, no,
that's a crappy fighting game mode, but that's nothing like the other brawlers.
Right. If you bought it for that, you would have been even more disappointed. So you get it as the fighting game you can play as one of 6 characters, I think.
And it's mirror matches.
Oh, it's so bad. But still, I did play a lot of that too. And because there wasn't a Street Fighter really on Nintendo that would be that kind of 2 versus 2 game. I guess Pit Fighter, and I'm not even going to count that as fun. So this was still fun to play against someone else, but you definitely wanted to play 2 players, same screen. That's why you would have bought this sort of game. Double Dragon 2 delivers on that promise by letting you play 2 players, both game A where you can't hurt each other and game B where you can. And I imagine Game B probably broke a lot of friendships. When I played a little bit of Double Dragon 4 with a friend of mine here just to kind of sample out the 2-player, we haven't spoken since. I don't know if we will again. But yeah, because Game B is where you can accidentally or not accidentally hurt the other player while you're playing. That is, I don't know if anyone's ever finished this game on 2B, ever, on any format.
There's a speed run I actually watched today just for shits and giggles where they enact that co-op mode B, and they use it to traverse the screen even faster.
Okay, well, that's
speed run purposes, and also to get over platforms.
Well, if you kill your friend, you can just get. Oh, they just show up on the other side, I guess.
Yeah, if you look it up on YouTube, it's like Double Dragon 2 speed run. It's like 13 minutes, and they clear it.
I'm sure that's not why they designed Mode B, but it's a pretty great feature. But Double Dragon 2 is a great Nintendo brawler. It might be one of the best Nintendo two-player brawlers out there totally. You've got all your moves from the get-go, which is great. You don't have to worry about, I didn't get to level 4, so I don't have a jump kick. You've got everything you need from the start of it. It also looks a lot nicer and cleaner than the original Double Dragon, because again, at the advance of the system, the skill of the people coding for the system, it looks much nicer than the original game. I remember playing days and days and days of Double Dragon 2, and at the time, I remember not being impressed, but playing it again now, I don't know what I was thinking, because Double Dragon 2 is worlds better than Double Dragon 1.
Oh my God, Double Dragon 2 is, this is basically the highlight of the series for Nintendo, and one, like you said, one of the best brawlers on the system. It's I actually never played, believe it or not, I never played Double Dragon 2 on the NES. Wow. I think that the original Double Dragon put me off so much to it that I never actually played it until we did this podcast, and everyone was saying how much like Double Dragon 4 was just kind of a poor man's version of Double Dragon 2. Not to spoil anything, but that's kind of the case. But Double Dragon 2 on the NES, it's a really great game.
Yeah, the co-op aspects of it are really... Did you guys play it single player, or were you blessed to have a partner with you?
For this podcast, I only played single player, but I had this game, and we had played it. It was a staple of, friends are over? Okay, we're going to play Double Dragon 2 for years. This
was a mandatory co-op game. The fact that you could actually combo characters into each other, like you can uppercut someone and then the other guy could just do a jumping spin kick, and then you would actually work together to make that happen, was such a good feeling.
And it still had some terrible platforming aspects, but compared to the first game, I felt at the time it was, way better. Just the general feel of the game moved a little easier. It didn't feel as clunky. I thought the first Double Dragon game, again, this is by memory. Playing them both now, I don't really see quite why I felt this way, but I remember the original one. I thought at the time, yeah, this is okay, but it's still just not as smooth feeling. And I thought 2 really hit that mark at the time. Even now, I think it does play a little better. I think the platform parts are probably equally bad, but for some reason it doesn't bother me as much. Probably because it's not quite as punishing. I think the second game, I finished the second game. It's nowhere near as punishing as the first game, in my opinion.
Yeah, the platforms aren't pixel perfect in the second one. There's room for error in them. Still not preferred, but you can get away with a botch jump sometimes. The only other thing I could complain about on that game, like if I had to complain, I should say, is the weird kicking, punching buttons.
Yes.
I don't know if
totally.
if that guy's threw you around. Like you face right and like punch is A and kick is B, and then you look the other way and the buttons are flipped for some reason. I don't know why they did that, but it's kind of weird to get used to. But once you figure out the broken jumping knee mechanic, the game is just, you don't need to hit those buttons ever. You don't need to punch or kick ever again. Because those knees assassinate. That was actually
my biggest complaint with the whole game was just like, why does this switch the buttons depending on which way I look? And I never got used to that. I got to the point where I could play through it and it was still fun, but I just didn't understand why they would do that. That it really makes no sense.
Well, I didn't hate it, and again at the time, I'm sure when I first played it, I was like, this is terrible. But then you get used to it, no big deal. And in a way, I thought that was actually kind of a cool thing. That way you felt like, if I'm going different directions, it's like this is my front and back. So that made sense for the way that attacked. I don't think I'd say it's the best possible mechanic, as it hasn't been redone ever. But I didn't hate it. It was just a thing. And it doesn't happen in 4, and I didn't miss it. So
is there like any reason for it? Like, is there like, if you're playing co-op, you need to do like your combination moves with somebody like that? But that's the only reason I can think of. I didn't get to play co-op with this, but that's really the only thing I can come up with.
I really think, and this might be a little inside baseball, but it's just like in the game, like the programming wise, it's thinking you're looking left, so these buttons are also looking left and right, or vice versa. It might be just something with the weird coding of the game itself, and it's just masking it. But like I said, once you figure out that jumping knee attack, and basically it's like a nuclear bomb in your knee, and it just one-shots everything, the game becomes super easy.
It is a little longer. It's 8 levels long instead of 4, but the levels are shorter. I think in Double Dragon 1, the levels are a lot longer, a little more involved generally, where there are some pretty short levels in 8, or in 2 of those 8 levels. Some of those are pretty short. We'll get back to 2 because we're going to compare 4 to 2, I think, a fair amount. based on my playthroughs of 4. Double Dragon 3 I do want to mention, because I own Double Dragon 3. It was one of the few games I got to purchase one year. I was like, I'm going to get Double Dragon 3 for like getting all B's and A's on my report card. And so I forced myself to play Double Dragon 3 a lot, and I have to say, it's one of the hardest games I've ever played. I don't know if I like it or not. I tried to play it again now, and like a lot of bad memories came back. There were only 5 levels, and I know I got to 3, because 3 is where you get to start playing as a different main character, and that's the farthest I ever got, and I didn't get that far this time. I don't know what they were thinking. 3 is just ridiculously hard.
Yeah, raise your hand if you got to see a third screen in this game.
Oh, yeah, I did. But again, that was after months and months of forcing myself to play this.
Yeah, like you have to abuse the spin kick to get anywhere, essentially. You have to cheese this game out. It is ridiculous that they only give you 1 life, and then that's it.
Yeah, there's no continues. There's no second life. You get 1 life that goes fast. It's not like it's like 1 life and you're superhuman. It's 1 life and you're fighting people who are essentially you over and over again for probably 1 screen. But if you get farther than that, I made it to the 3rd level. What I liked about the 3rd game, and I have to give them credit for trying, is they did introduce new characters you would play as, and they had slightly different movesets. For the Nintendo, that's pretty impressive, but they didn't make the difficulty get to where anyone even saw that second character.
Right.
I mean, like I think like many people that might be listening to this podcast, I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd, Nintendo Nerd review of this, and I never actually played Double Dragon 3, but I was always just like, maybe he's probably exaggerating what happened. And no, he's not. You literally get 1 life, and if you can make it to the 3rd screen in that game, you have accomplished something. I can't understand why you would go there. Is this one of those games that's only got like 3 or 4 levels that it's trying to overcompensate for being so goddamn hard? But I just can't understand why they would do this.
I think they wanted to do something more. You want to make it epic. So they have this new story that goes across continents. It's a huge, a global story of conquest and rescue and revenge, but they've just made it too hard. And it's for consoles, so they figure kids like me are going to spend days and days just focusing on these levels to get better at them, as opposed to, Double Dragon 2 was fun, and you'd want to play with other people, so you can blow through it in an hour and feel good about it. You're not going to blow through this game the first hour you own it. There's no chance you get out of that first room in the first hour you own it. It's a hard game. That's another one that actually the Broken Glasses Gaming had done a play on that, where Dave and the other guy Kevin, who seems to do a lot of the I guess he's the main host of the channel.
He does the indie stuff, and I make him just play old NES games to see, this generation, see how he could go against my generation.
And he did better than I thought in this game, to be fair, because this game is balls hard.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to get out of the first room. Also, spoiler alert, the old lady is the bad guy. There's an old lady that makes you go around the world. She's the bad guy.
Yeah, I watched just a full playthrough of it to see, and I was like, well, I would have actually been angry if I got this far in it, but I never did. I got to World 3, and that's good enough for me. Thankfully, after this game, they more or less said, let's go back to what we do best for Double Dragon 4, which is to basically make a clone of Double Dragon 2. Before I talk about Double Dragon 4, I didn't know until this podcast that these other games existed in this series in between Double Dragon 3 and the Double Dragon 4 we're about to speak about. There was a Super Double Dragon on Super Nintendo, which for some reason...
Oh, man, really?
Yes. Yeah, it's not great.
No, I actually rented Super Double... Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Super Double Dragon
or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not great. It seemed to continue on with this kind of slow, overly animated attacks of 3. But I honestly, after playing 3, I'm just like, anything's better than this.
It was better than 3.
And Final Fight came out and upped the game while they just kind of stayed in the past.
Yeah, it does look better than the Nintendo, because it is Super Nintendo. But yeah, it doesn't look as good as Final Fight. I'd say graphically it's about on par with Streets of Rage, maybe. But again, you're comparing yourself to Final Fight on the Super Nintendo, and Super Double Dragon didn't do it. And then I didn't even know this existed. Double Dragon 5, The Shadow Falls, which is a straight-up Street Fighter clone that looks real bad.
Oh, man.
Based on the cartoon.
I actually remember that. I saw that in Game Fan magazine. And I was like, "Oh, what is this mess?"
Yeah, that's based off the cartoon.
And totally forgot that there was actually a cartoon version of Double Dragon.
Did either of you actually play this Double Dragon 5 fighter.
Yes.
I suck at fighter, so it could have been the best fighter on earth, and I would have thought it was terrible.
No, it's not good. It's not good at all. It's very clunky and stiff.
That's what it looked like. And again, everything I play for a fighter looks that way, so that's not a surprise. Yeah. But it didn't look absolutely terrible. It wasn't Rise of the Robots, but it was pretty bad looking. And then there was apparently just a Double Dragon fighter that was out on Neo Geo. I watched a video of that tonight that I didn't even know it existed. It looked fine, but again, looks like every other fighter. Doesn't look as impressive as a Street Fighter though. But that same kind of 2D, one-on-one fighting game.
Right.
And then I think there's some sort of Game Boy version that's a version of the original.
Oh, there's a Game Boy Advance one, which is like, it looks like the arcade version, but it also looks like it was like a digitized Mortal Kombat type looking thing. But I think it was also animated over. It looks really weird. There's videos out there. There's also a remake of 2 for Xbox Arcade, which is called like Wrath of the Dragon or something like that. It's really bad too. Yeah.
I own the sort of remake of the original Double Dragon for Xbox Live back in the day, and I remember when people were like, "This is how you should do a remake of a classic video game," just because they kind of half-ass redrew the graphics to be in 720p or whatever. But
yeah,
that was definitely more of the arcade than what the NES version was.
Yeah, that was an arcade port.
Yeah,
but this one is a completely new game. If you look it up, it's called Wrath of the Dragon. There's video out there too. It's super bad, but
oh man,
yeah. Double Dragon Neon came out in 2012. That's the other sequel / remake / whatever that I saw, and then I saw some pictures of it. It looked okay, but again, I'm not the biggest fan of brawlers, so I normally wouldn't run out to pick one of those up. Apparently, it was okay. I don't know if you guys have played a lot of any of it at all. I played I watched a little bit of it to see. It looks fine.
If you like 80s aesthetics and self-aware like humor, I suppose, that doesn't overdo it, it's up your alley.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a parody than a straight sequel. They knew what they were building when they built it, but apparently not a huge hit, I guess, because they instead the people who own Double Dragon decided this is what the people want. They want Double Dragon 2, but in 2017. So they've given it to us in the form of Double Dragon 4, which is at a half an hour in. What we're supposed to be talking about this episode is Double Dragon 4. Now, I played a lot of Double Dragon 4 in the last 2.5 weeks to get ready for this podcast, and I have to say, my immediate thoughts on starting the game and playing it is, oh, that's right. That's why I don't play many of these anymore.
This game was like a fire sale on Double Dragon assets or something like that. It's just like, I guess they were going for cheap on eBay or something like that, and no one was buying them. So Arxis just whipped it up together and just like, let's just throw all this stuff together from 1, 2, and 3 and make a game out of it. But mostly 2.
Yeah. It's going to be like 98% 2. And then they're like, yeah, and there's some other stuff. But 2, I mean, playing through 2 now, again, it's been years. But after playing 4 and then going back and playing 2, I was like, these are literally the same graphics. This is the same characters, the same like the punk guy with the mohawk, and the guy with the metal heads that everything but their heads dissolve when you beat them. I was like, these are the same guys. I mean, I remember them being there, but I didn't remember how exactly the same they were. But they're the same exact everything.
They have the same movesets too. Like, they kind of put new movesets in some of them, but they're like, you could tell that they're redrawn for, an elbow or something like that. But it's really weird when you see like Double Dragon 2 Ralper and then Double Dragon 1 Abobo, and then you see the bald guy from Double Dragon 3 that killed you a billion times like on a new body. It's bizarre.
I don't know if this says anything about the quality of the game, but the highlight of the entire Double Dragon 4 experience for me was seeing Green Abobo come onto the screen.
Yes.
And that was that got a pretty good laugh out of me. So, I mean, it's just kind of actually reminded me more of like a ROM hack than a full game. It was like kind of one of these games that somebody was just like, I really liked Streets of Rage 2, so I'm just kind of gonna like hack the ROM and make my own version of this with various kind of characters from other games, kind of a Mugen fighting version of Streets or Double Dragon 2s. That's really the whole time I was playing this. I was like, I'm literally just playing an actual ROM hack that's being sold to me for $7.
It does feel very much like, there was like, that's fine. Who cares? A fan made this. We'll sell it. This is perfect. Because it feels like it's exactly like Double Dragon 2. Now, they got rid of that that directional one. If you're forward, the one button kicks and the other one punches or whatever that we were talking about for the original Double Dragon 2 on Nintendo. Instead, this adds a third button, which is great because previously to jump you'd have to push, jump, and kick. Now instead you can just hit another button and jump. Other than that, they really haven't changed the mechanics of this game drastically from the original series. You have a jump button, a kick button, and a punch button. And then all the other moves you have, like the uppercut, you have to jump, and then as soon as you land, hit that punch button, and you'll do like an uppercut move. It's little moves like that. It's the same kind of mechanics they had in Double Dragon 2, but they've put them completely on the PS4, along with pretty much just taking the exact graphic assets and throwing it back on the PS4. It's an interesting way to do sequels and remakes. A lot of games have done this over the years where they've done like, oh, we're going to put out like a new Bionic Commando, but instead it's a whole new. The graphics look more or less current compared to the original Nintendo version, and they add a few new levels here and there. But generally, it's like, oh yeah, we took that same game you remember, but we made it look like in your mind it looks like this, not like here's the original game again, but different. This is that same idea where they're like, oh, we're going to take those graphics, we'll make you a brand new game, but it's exactly the same as it was then. There's no difference.
And not only that, like they were touting like the original creators were on board with this, and once they bring this thing out, it's like, what have you guys been doing for the past 30 years? You couldn't really innovate here. It's like, I don't know, like saying the guy that invented the Big Mac is coming back to make out of retirement to make a new hamburger, and it tastes just like a Big Mac or something like that.
It's a Big Mac with no onions. There it is.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah. And it's really bizarre. I really think that this game was just to garner like poke at the water to see if anyone's actually interested in this franchise still, and this was an easy way to capitalize on that.
It
definitely feels like
the
something.
30th anniversary, like, isn't it? Like, this is what it was touted to be, as like the game that was supposed to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Double Dragon, and this it really just kind of comes across as a very half-assed attempt at making a Double Dragon game. I don't know. I just, not only did you get kind of a half-assed Double Dragon 2 gameplay, which Double Dragon 2 on NES was great, but I never had as much fun playing Double Dragon 4 as I did on Double Dragon 2 on the NES, and it even added in the insufferable platforming sections.
Yes.
that just make the game even more. I just didn't want to play. I didn't have fun playing this like I did with Double Dragon 2.
I thought I kind of had the same feeling, but I did play a lot of it, and I did grow to enjoy it. But that's not saying much, as I'm currently enjoying Final Fantasy VIII as much as I hate playing it. but I thought maybe if I had two players, this game would be the best thing I've played in years. Because, for example, for New Year's Eve 2014, I spent the night with my friend playing River City Ransom, and it was the best New Year's Eve in the last 10 years prior. So I do believe that there's something to having someone else there. That said, I tried to play Double Dragon 4 with a friend, and as I mentioned earlier, it did not go well. The B mode just made us angry at each other. And then when you switch to the A mode, and I don't remember if Double Dragon 2 on Nintendo had done this, but it makes the game significantly harder. It adds extra characters. So, for example, at the end of level, I think it's level 4, you end up in like that casino where you fight one Abobo and one guy with the helmet and one of the punk guys. When you play 2 players, it's 2 of each of them, all at the same time.
Really?
So it's not like you have 2 players and you can use each other to kind of make this a cakewalk. Instead, it's like, oh no, you're going to play with 2 players? Well, go fuck yourself. We've made this even less enjoyable.
I think the originals Double Dragon 2 did have scaling to that effect, if I recall.
And it may have. I didn't have the ability to play Double Dragon 2 with a friend for this podcast, but I definitely did when I was younger. But a lot of stuff that's the whole point of this podcast is things I played when I was younger. Are they still good now? Right. So I don't necessarily recall if it got harder, but definitely 4 does. So there's a spoiler for you if you thought having a friend come over would help it make it easier. It does not.
And like we keep talking about, the making references to Double Dragon 2, like there's a lot of stages in Double Dragon 4 that just kind of end Like, I didn't even know I was
Yeah.
fighting a boss, and it was just like mission end. I was like, what? It was like 2 screens long.
So
It took me less than like 3 minutes to beat, and I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'm going to the next stage.
yeah, Double Dragon 1 was 4 levels long. 2 is 8 levels long. 3 was 5 levels long, and this game has 12 levels. But like you said, some of those
feels
levels
way
feel like
shorter,
it's
though.
like, it's super shorter. One of the levels, and it's the one after the casino, I believe. You walk out of a building, you walk to the right 6 feet, and you fight guys, and the level ends. And you're like, what the hell was that? That doesn't make any, like, I don't know why that level ended. Was there supposed to be like a car there? I don't know what happened, but it's just like, you fought a guy and it's over. Isn't that cool? Anyway, here's level 6. Don't worry about it.
But I mean, we sound like we're ragging on this game a lot, but let's talk about the fantastic story it has.
It does. It's one of those stories.
Get this. Wait a sec. Marion gets kidnapped.
Now you wouldn't believe this is going to happen because it's
I know,
never
it's
happened.
ridiculous.
The best thing about the game is, besides Green and Bobo, is midway through the game when Marion literally gets kidnapped the exact same way from the original Double Dragon.
Yes, that was a nice nod.
Yeah, it was a nice nod, but I was like, did we really?
Do we need a nod
how
in a
many
game that's
times
literally the
does
same
she have
game?
to hang out in this alley to know she probably shouldn't be in this alley.
It's the same game. Here's a nod to the game that we're clearly ripping off the whole way through. In case you didn't know what game this was, guys, this is it. It's Double Dragon. You didn't know it, did you? Yeah, but I thought it was funny, and I did. I was like, all right, I get that. That's cool. But the Abobo, the green Abobo was funny. My favorite Abobo in the game is the elevator Abobo. I love that one.
hanging out there.
You just walk into an elevator. Like normally at the, some of these levels have doorways that go to other rooms, or they take you to an elevator that take you to the top of that same room you're already in. But there's one elevator you walk in, and there's just an Abobo waiting there in case someone walks in to beat the crap out of them. But this Abobo, very slow, does not pick up on things real quick. So I don't think that Abobo has ever hit me. In any playthrough of this game I've made so far, that Abobo in the elevator is just there for me to jump kick over and over again until I get off the elevator to kill some time.
It would have been funny if he was actually a pacifist and you just let time go by and you could actually get out of the elevator, making you look like the asshole for just beating up a dude in an elevator.
Yeah, he has a skin condition. He's not an Abobo. What's wrong with you?
I also like how, like, what I said about the story, the game just starts with some road rage incident and the Lee brothers go insane and just start murdering everyone. It really paints them in a bad light if you think about it.
Well, except that at the same time, the story is literally, they're driving from one coast to the other to open up a new dojo. Hey, wait, someone ran him off the road. But it doesn't make any sense either. Why would that even happen? But yeah, once it does, then they're like, all right, we're going to kick everyone's ass the whole way to California.
Yeah, it's really weird. Why would I don't know. I mean, the story is maybe, like, if you watch all the cutscenes for the story, maybe 13 seconds long.
Oh, yeah, no, and the story is terrible. I mean, you've kind of hinted at it. But yeah, the story is bad. It's, they kidnap your girlfriend. And then once you get to the end, it's like, we were
it's
just
cool.
Yeah, we were just mad because you guys were cool, but now it's cool, right? Aren't we all cool? And everyone's like, yeah, we are cool. The end. It's like, that was the weirdest story I've ever seen in a game. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. Not that you need a story. I mean, if there were story scenes in between levels of Contra, for example, I wouldn't care what they are. I'm going to play that level and I'm going to shoot everything that moves. I don't care what it is. So you don't need a in-depth story for this kind of game. I had to finish this game with a continue. I've made it to the last level, the level 12, many times, and I didn't finish it without having to actually continue the game. Was anyone able to finish this without at all and just make me look bad because I'm not good at brawlers?
No, the platforming stuff after the Mr. Burns trap that you get set up for when you fall through the floor.
Yes.
Where they just walk up and confront the boss lady, and then all of a sudden they like stand there for like 5 Mississippi, and then they fall through the floor. That platforming section there was brutal.
The only reason I made it through the entire game on the 5 continues that gives you, or 4, was because within 5 minutes of that game I learned how to completely cheese everything. It kind of does, You get this jump kick that you can do, or jump that you can do towards an opponent, and once you land, if you hit the punch button, you will uppercut him, and it's a super powerful uppercut. Punches them off the fucking screen, and they come back down. And if you can just line everybody up over and over and time this right, nothing can stop you. Literally nothing in the entire game, besides the platforming, that was the thing that took me down the most. I was actually on my last life when I did beat the game, but it was almost impossible. with the platforming. But without the platforming, if you can do that, and probably a few other ways to cheese this game. I didn't search it out, but it didn't seem like it was hard to cheese a lot of the enemies and things. It probably wouldn't be hard at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had mentioned this earlier, Jeremy. The only thing that makes this game hard is that they just cover you with enemies, and then it gets you kind of stuck in a cycle where you're not able to do a whole lot until you can kind of clear out a few enemies here and there. I actually have to say that, especially one-on-one, there's really no challenge. The only hard enemy in this game, if you actually had to kind of deal with them, is that they're the regular guys that show up every couple levels, and they just throw chains with balls on the end at you.
Yeah,
they're
the
not even
boomerangs.
hard, but those guys suck so bad because if they throw it, they boomerang back. So you'll get hit once, you're like, okay, fine, and then you get up to like do the next thing, and before you have any chance to get more than one punch in, on the way back, the boomerang balls hit you in the head and knock you right back down to the ground again. Worst enemy in the history of games.
It just,
Yeah.
Even that, like, you could kind of move around and get out of its way. To whereas, like, the previous Double Dragons, if you definitely got caught in people just on each side of you, you were done for unless you got lucky and moved out of the way. This one does at least give you, if you're down, if you jam on the punch button in any direction that somebody is coming at you, you will do an uppercut and just, blast them out of the way. I did appreciate that. But it really just seemed to make the game already easier than what it seems to be.
Yeah, wake up attacks are pretty cheesy in that game. You can also kite people. Like I beat the final boss, by just kiting everyone to one side of the screen to the left.
Yeah.
And then I would just do jumping spin kicks. That's all I would do. Once they start getting up, I would get in the air and do a jumping spin kick, and they'd fall back down. And all 4 or 5 of them would just repeat the process like 10 times, and they're done.
Yep, just back and forth.
Yeah.
I would jump back and wait a second, jump forward, and do the uppercut as soon as I landed, and that was it.
Yeah. The other thing is if you're that getting up attack, if you do it with a kick, it's like a knee thing, and you can just kind of chain those across the screen, and it probably won't hit the same guy more than once or twice, but if there's a bunch of guys, it'll knock all of them like directly across the screen, off the side of the screen, and especially if there's a place to fall off of, if there's a conveyor belt or something, it just knocks them completely out of the fight. It's not even an issue anymore.
Half the time you didn't even really need to do that. They would just kind of jump off the screen on their own. I uploaded a thing to Twitter where a guy kind of jumped off to me. He jumped at me and then just kind of stood there. I didn't do anything. And then he just jumped backwards into lava. He's like, well, all right. I guess that's, whatever you need to do there, buddy.
Well, at least the NPCs.
That happened to me too. And I think that's purpose. That might be purposely done just to show off that splash effect for the lava. Because it looked very new.
Yeah.
Like it looked like they made that. Like it didn't take it from a game. So that very well could have just been a program thing.
Or it could have been that they threw this together in 20 minutes and sold it to us for $7. So they didn't worry about those. Like, yeah, that's fine. Who cares? They can jump in the lava. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
That next level, there's an elevator with an abobo in it. It's great. Just put that in there. It's amazing. So did either of you actually finish this even with continues just to get through the whole thing?
Yes. And I replayed it. You could replay it with different characters, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yes, I do like that. You can, and because the different characters do have different movesets somewhat, which is nice. I also like the tower option. The tower option that opens up after you finish this game, it lets you just it's mindless, but it lets you just fight guys with one life for the rest of time. And I'm never going to get that far. I think I got to 30. I felt good about that. 30 levels of just fighting a handful of guys in a room over and over again. That kind of already happens in the game. At a certain level, you go to a series of rooms that you basically just fight your way through a room, and then there's 3 doors, and you fight your way through the room, and there's 3 doors until you get to the boss. But I enjoyed the tower because it is just kind of what I like about this game without the platforming, without the fact that I need some ridiculous story that I don't care about. It was just like, you fight some people, and you go to a new room, and you fight some people, and you go to a new room. I've actually enjoyed Tower more than the basic game itself.
I actually got kind of some sort of anxiety, that part you were just talking about, that last level. Because I was like, is this going to be one of those asshole games that's like so easy to get to this point, but then you have to figure out the exact way to get through these doors, because it gives you 3 doors that you can go through in that last level. And I was like, oh no, do I have to pick the correct sequence of these doors to get to this top level? But now you just whatever. Well, from what I did, I just picked random doors to get at that top level to get to the last boss.
I don't think it's the last level. I think that's like level 10 out of 12.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
you're
like-
right.
it-
Yes,
it's towards
yes.
the end
That
because the karate
after
guys
that
show
one,
up.
yes.
Because after that is when you have the level that throws the platforming garbage at you, where it's like, oh yeah, go through a hole, and then
that level with all the ninja girls. We haven't mentioned this, but I want to say the sound effects in this game are probably. This is probably one of the first times that my girlfriend has ever gotten annoyed at me or playing a video game, because the sound effects just kind of sound like a dot matrix printer, just going back and forth over and over with how the punches and everything else, especially those little ninja girls that jump around the screen. It was not a pleasant experience.
I don't know.
I hear it's probably programmed on one, so
I hear daily, hey, these games sound obnoxious, turn them down. I'm amazed this is the first time that's happened for you, because I literally, it's an everyday occurrence. Hey, please turn this game off. This game sounds terrible. What are you listening to? This is the same sound over and over again. Could you please play this when I'm not home? Those are all things I hear all the time. This I did not hear that about, because I thankfully did not play this when my wife was home. So I guess my question is, do you recommend it to anyone?
I mean, I guess. I mean, I would definitely recommend Double Dragon 2 on the NES. I would actually recommend any of the Double Dragons, the arcade versions, over this. But it's not a terrible game. It's just not a very good game, especially if this is like your anniversary version of what you want to consider Double Dragon. This is like, we're putting this out here in 2016, 2017, whatever the fuck year it is. I don't know. This doesn't seem like what you would want to throw out as the best you've got for Double Dragon, because this really just kind of, like I've said before, it just kind of seems like a ROM hack. It seems like it would be something like on one of those weird Dreamcast discs that you can throw in there that have like 1,000 ROMs on it that people have made. And that's really what it kind of comes across as. It's not a bad game, but it's not the standout version of what Double Dragon should be to me.
I'd have to say no. As someone that really likes Double Dragon, it's just, I mean, like you guys said, it's just retreading without innovating. At least with other D-makes like Mega Man 9 and 10, they were able to innovate on what they were doing with that game. It wasn't just going back to, the same thing over and over again. They're actually able to improve with abilities and stuff like that. While Double Dragon 2 has a couple new moves here and there, it's just really the same old stuff. If anything, I would recommend playing a Bobo's Big Adventure. That's a free Flash game, and that would probably be up, if anyone that's listening to this hasn't played that yet. I would recommend doing that, because I mean, it takes a Bobo and a bunch of other NES sprites and just puts it into a big comedy brawler, and it's actually really good.
I was just going to mention
that's kind of what this game seems like. It's almost like a parody of Double Dragon at times. I mean, especially when Green Abobo came out, I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, is this really what you want to do with Double Dragon? It was almost comedy to me, but I guess that's what this game is, and I would definitely agree with what David said. Just play Abobo's Big Adventure. That's a much better game than what this is.
Yeah,
I think this is a very narrow audience you're aiming at. You're aiming at people who are remember how great Double Dragon 2 was, but don't either have Double Dragon 2 on a Nintendo sitting around or feel like using an emulator. So you're like, oh man, I really want to play Double Dragon 2, but I don't want to take 30 seconds to find an emulator. What am I going to do? Hey, cool, they just put a new game out that's exactly like Double Dragon 2. That's got to be like 8 people. I can't imagine anyone that would, because if you weren't alive when Double Dragon 2 was out, and you wouldn't enjoy this game. If you're 10 years old right now, you're not playing Double Dragon 4 and thinking how amazing this is. Instead, you're like, yeah, this is great, but I just bought Yakuza 0, and I not only just broke a guy's face with a bicycle, but then later on I sold some girl's panties. So you're not going to play this game. This is not your kind of game. This is a game for people who now are 35 to 40, and then you would just play this on an emulator, or you still have your Nintendo hooked up. So it's a weird kind of game. David mentioned Mega Man 9 and 10. I think this would be if Mega Man 9 and 10 at the end of every level was a boss you fought through Mega Man 1 through 6. because that's exactly what this is. It's
Yeah.
all the stuff you've already seen. The level design is the same. The backgrounds are the same. There was nothing new and amazing. I guess the only new people were the actual final bosses that had guns. You're like, oh, man, they have guns. But that doesn't really help you because you're just going to do the same goddamn trick. You knock them down once, and then it's like, cool. Now I can uppercut you for the rest of time until the game ends.
It just, I don't know. It was one of those things. Like I've considered Double Dragon as one of my favorite games of all time. That original arcade version. To see this compared to that, it really didn't. You know, for stuff like this, if you're aiming for that 35 to 40 crowd, you really need to bring that nostalgia aspect to it, and it gets a little bit from Double Dragon 2, but you need to have a little bit more of that. Just playing Double Dragon 2 today, like playing through what I did, there was more imagination and like just the way every stage was. It just seemed like a much better game. This just seemed really lazy. It just seemed like a really kind of lazy attempt to get that nostalgia for this game, and it just doesn't work.
So we seem to be in agreement. Double Dragon 4, fun, not great. Don't recommend it. Just go play Double Dragon 2 or a different game altogether if you want that sort of brawler-style game. That does, we brought up Mega Man 9 and 10. This does bring up a question I've actually asked several times to myself because I like to talk to myself at times. If there was, do you like this kind of remake, demake, the idea of like a Mega Man 9 or 10 or this kind of thing where it's like, yeah, we took the kind of game you would, literally the game you would have played on Nintendo, but we're really re-releasing it now. Those are the two major ones I can think of, but I know there have definitely been others. Contra 4 for the Game Boy Advance, or the DS, I'm sorry, is literally just a better version of, not better, a new version of Contra with the same kind of graphic assets that Contra would have had. Is that more enjoyable than a full-on, reimagining of the title with modern assets and a better, graphical set, like a Metroid Prime over Metroid? I don't even know what else I would compare it to.
It depends really on the franchise. Some are better, like Metal Gear, for instance. Like that's a better game that has new assets and stuff. But like if you were to make a demake and go in the lineage of that, a few popped in my head. The old Ninja Gaiden NES games would be, I think, pretty good for a demake remake, but have the option to have the bullshit respawning glitches that it usually has, where the infinite hawks coming at you because you're stuck at a portion of the screen, have an option to turn that off. Shinobi, the old Sega Shinobi games, but only if they embrace the copyright infringement that they were doing, like
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man, Batman, Godzilla. Like if they could somehow get like, I don't know, franchises and stuff in 2016, 2017, like newer stuff, and throw that in there just to get around the copyright. And it would be cool to see Earthworm Jim again. The last time they made a game with him, it was that horrible 3D one, but I really enjoyed the 2D art from the old Earthworm Jim games, and if they went back to that style, I think it would still fit in today's gaming landscape, if you want to call it that. But a nice HD new Earthworm Jim would be pretty cool.
Earthworm Jim 3D may be the worst possible 3D incarnation of a character that was great. I mean, there's a lot of bad 3D games. Bubsy 3D is terrible, but no one liked Bubsy, so who cares if your 3D game is terrible? Earthworm Jim 3D was embarrassingly bad, and I tried so hard to like it because I loved the first two games, and I hated myself for playing so much Earthworm Jim 3D. It was a terrible game.
The boss fights were impossible in that game, but I digress.
We could do a whole month on Earthworm Jim 3D. Very excited about it. I was thinking about the same thing. Is there a game now that I'd love to see it like a demake of? And everything I thought of, I was like, wait, that already actually happened. So Contra was one I had mentioned. Contra 4. I was like, oh yeah, that already happened. I was going to say River City Ransom, but there's a new like 8-bit looking River City Ransom that just came out or is coming out, and I'll play that too. And there's nothing I can think of that wasn't like, they made. I was going to say Castlevania, but then Symphony of the Night is the best game in that series, in my opinion. And I don't want to play Castlevania 3 again. I'd rather play a brand new Symphony of the Night style Castlevania. So I don't know if there's any other games that I want to see an 8-bit demake of. I mean, other than Milon's Secret Castle, that could be the one I need. A new Milon's Secret Castle. Jeremy, is there any game that you can think of, like 8-bit or even 16-bit, that you'd want like a full demake of?
So this is more directed to you than me. I actually really want this game. This is a series that's had obviously several sequels to. Or
if you say General Chaos, I'm shutting this
added
podcast down.
It doesn't matter. It's just maybe a certain part of a series that that didn't receive as much attention as the later games did. But I want to throw out Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. If you could get a modern, not shitty version of Zelda 2, what would you think of that?
I would still think it sucks. That is the worst Zelda game. It is. It's not the worst Zelda game. I'm not counting the CDI games.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If Nintendo went insane, obviously never would do this, and they threw out a Zelda 2, a side-scrolling overhead adventure that was kind of in the same vein of Symphony of the Night, which, the Zelda 2 wasn't too far off from that. You're
way wrong.
It's not. It's far off, but still, it's a kind of open world. You've got your side-scrolling levels, and you get your different powers and things like that. But if you got a modern take on that wasn't done by insane people, that could make a competent game, a side-scrolling Zelda game in the vein of Symphony of the Night, but in maybe like dungeons and things like that, but still an overworld that you had to traverse, I think that would be kind of awesome.
I strongly disagree. First off, Zelda 2, that whole the fact that Zelda 1 exists at all makes Zelda 2 even worse. If Zelda 2 was called something else like Battle of Olympus, which is essentially what Battle of Olympus is, then I would have been fine with it, because it wouldn't have been the same game. Zelda 1 is perfect. It's the perfect game, and you don't need to do anything to change that formula. So then they make Zelda 2 and it's totally different. That's Castlevania to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's the same kind of game. You're not really breaking any boundaries there. You've added some things. You can transform. You can do these different things you could have done in Castlevania, but it still feels like I can see how from point A I got to point B. Point A from the original Legend of Zelda to Zelda 2, they aren't even on the same playing field. You can't get from point A to point B. You'd have to do some other crazy shit like just throw a game out because you don't know what else to do with it. It's... I don't even... That's not even... you just try to get me angry with that answer. That was the whole point of
What
that.
you're saying is you hate Zelda 2.
Everyone hates Zelda 2. I don't know one person that doesn't hate Zelda 2.
It's such a weird game, though. Like, I would love to see what would happen with Zelda 2 in the hands of people that wouldn't make a crazy game.
No, it's
like what we got. Maybe like a side adventure or something. We've never had anything like that besides Zelda 2. And as many people that want to say that didn't happen, it is Zelda 2. That is the sequel to the original. Obviously, they went on to do much better things than what Zelda 2 was. But man, I would love to see an actual Zelda 2, like made in kind of the vein of like just kind of a side-scrolling game, like a side-scrolling adventure game, RPG. That'd be kind of neat. But obviously, that's never gonna.
That would just be every Metroidvania. Every Metroidvania is what you just described.
But still, that would be. I would play that. I would totally buy that and play that.
Well, I guess the answer we just gave was no. We don't. We don't generally like this sort of demake. I mean, sometimes, again, there have been times it works. I do think Mega Man 9 and 10 are kind of the perfect examples because they essentially just what remade games they would have made after 6, but with, now. It wasn't, let's take these characters and these levels you liked and kind of reblend them. They made their own new game that followed the same mechanics. And there aren't many games you can do that with that you can't say would honestly be better now. I guess it took Mega Man Legends to prove that Mega Man needs to stay 2D and flat. So... I do want to say thanks again, Dave, for coming and filling in while Billy is out. You are on, again, Broken Glasses Gaming YouTube channel. I believe you also have several other things you're doing.
Yeah, I have a podcast that I do from time to time. It's not on the rigid scales that you guys have. It's called Clouded Judgement, where it's kind of the same thing as this, only me and a bunch of people take things in media, comic books, video games, movies, and see if the ones that are like the highest of the highest standards, the best of the best that are so called, and see if they hold up For instance, we just did the Death of Superman not too long ago, and I usually try to get someone that's never read, played, or watched the media so he could look at it with fresh eyes. And yeah, we did the Death of Superman. We've done the movie Aliens. Resident Evil 4 is on there. That was our first episode. It's interesting to see that with someone taking it in for the first time, their thoughts on it. And I also write for Preternia.com. It's an action figure site if you're into that. So yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully Billy will be back next episode. We're going to go back to a system that I'm determined to find a game that these guys like. We're going to go back to the TurboGrafx 16, but this time also for a game style we haven't really touched on since General Chaos strategy games. We're going to do Military Madness for the TurboGrafx 16 in the next 2 weeks. But until then, please check us out on Retrovania.net. There's actually a new video coming up for Super C for the NES that Jeremy worked on. Also follow us on Twitter at Retrovania.net, on Facebook at Retrovania.net, and we will see you next time.